Alrighty, well, hello people, YouTube, whatnot. So some may or may not have noticed that we have been away for a little while. Haven't been putting up content. That's because we went through some life changes. Basically, we decided it was time for a change of scenery. Just wanted to do some new things. So I'm not really going to go into like great detail with that. We are no longer in the United States. So you can take that for what it's worth. It was time for a change, and now we're doing something new and exciting. Life is far too short to not do what you want and deal with a bunch of nonsense, unnecessary nonsense, I should say. So again, without like delving too deeply into that, that's kind of like the long and short of what's been going on. So with a new environment and a new culture and new things going on, I wanted to show you my new project. Those of you that know that I've been doing Toyota stuff for pushing 30 years at this point, which honestly just seems crazy. It's been like a blink. I have a pretty good knowledge base of Toyota mini trucks, 4Runners, Tacomas, things like that. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of this information, useless information, just burned into my head. So if you have Toyota questions on actual Toyota mini trucks, hit me up and I can probably help you out. I'm just gonna go out and straight up say I'm not a huge like Tacoma fan. Tacoma, Tundra, anything that wasn't built in Japan isn't a Toyota. So you can take that for what it's worth as well. But with that being said, we can talk about my new project here. Those of you who know anything about anything, the Toyota mini truck, quote unquote mini truck, was sold in every other market as the Hilux. Okay, so what you're looking at here is my new project. This is a 93 Toyota Hilux. It has got the 3L, not a 3-liter, the 3L 2.8 liter mechanical diesel. So it's not fast by any means, but these things are basically bomb proof. If you've seen the Top Gear video or you have seen Whistling Diesel's video, you understand that these have a reputation for a reason. They are quite literally a bomb proof truck, okay? And kind of the big pull with this particular vehicle with me was the mechanical diesel aspect of it. There's no computer, there's nothing that can get EMP, there's nothing like that. So basically when the shit hits the fan, nothing's really gonna take this out except for a lack of diesel. And then I can burn used oil or fry oil or whatever. So what we're gonna do today is just do a little walk around on this truck. Basically, kind of what I wanted to talk about is the differences between the quote-unquote mini truck and the Hilux. I was kind of living in this headspace where these trucks were more or less identical. And I mean, while they do have tons of similarities and lots of overlap, there are quite a few quirks and little kind of differences that they aren't the same, all right? They are, I don't want to say they're a completely different animal, but they are certainly a different animal. And kind of one thing that I kind of want to touch on with this is, I know in the States, a lot of people like really kind of have a hard-on for the Hilux. And, you know, like I can understand everyone likes to have something that's unique to where they're at and stuff like that. But so just to kind of put this in perspective, if you really kind of step back and take a look at the market, the North American vehicle markets, especially the United States in itself, is very niche, okay? So when you like step back and you look at the Toyota market and what they've done and what they sold, what you will start to understand is the North American vehicles are, quite frankly, way more rare than any of these Hiluxes anywhere, okay? So these vehicles were produced worldwide. Okay, so these vehicles interchange in the Middle East, in Japan, South America, in Europe, everywhere. All of these cars all over the world interchange, okay? That's not true of the North American market cars, okay? Again, like there's a little bit of overlap with those vehicles, but the North American market in and of itself is very niche. We never got diesels, everywhere else got diesels. There's a lot of subtle differences in these cars that, in my opinion, didn't necessarily make them a better car. The market in the United States, if you like have any understanding of the vehicle market and how the trade works, how taxes work, how EPA works, how DOT works, you kind of will understand why the cars ended up the way that they ended up in the States, and how that, I don't know, like it's kind of a completely different avenue to go down the road. But anybody that knows anything about chicken tax, anything that knows about how any of those organizations actually work, will understand that they basically have gone out of their way to hamstring foreign car makers. And, you know, that's why we didn't get the diesels in the States, okay? It was mostly like an EPA thing. They're not fast by any means. This vehicle wouldn't be fun on the US freeways because it's friggin' slow. Much slower than like a 22R even. Anyway, like I said, without going into that, I just kind of want to talk about like the differences in these vehicles, okay? So basically what we'll do is we'll start at the front end of this vehicle and we'll work our way back, okay? So obviously, I'm not going to open the hood here immediately, but what we will talk about, kind of like the first front on this vehicle, is the corner markers. So the corner markers on these cars in all spec markets except for the United States, this is a dual bulb, okay? This bulb has got your marker light and it has a blinker in it. You can see we have a marker bulb, we have a blinker bulb, okay? So in the States, we only got the blinkers in the bumper. I don't really know why that is. This is a much, much better design and makes it much more visible when you are on the street. So the 4Runner in the States, I ended up putting these Euro markers on them, or I should say the worldwide markers on them, just because then you can actually see a blinker signal from the side. You just straight up can't see the blinker signal from the side with the forward facing bumper. When we move into this, we can look underneath here. Let me get a better light here and we can talk about, yep, it's a front solid axle. Wait a minute, this vehicle is a 93. Yes, it's a 93 solid axle, okay? So a lot of these cars, and again, it varies a little bit by market, but a lot of these cars got solid axles up until 97, okay? So those of you that are familiar with Toyota standard solid axle will notice that's a different leaf spring pack. Okay, so that's kind of where we start. We have a different leaf pack. This is a much beefier leaf pack, just kind of for the market. These are like a 5 leaf or whatever. The rears are a 7 leaf. We'll talk about that in a minute. I will post a picture because I'm not going to pull the wheel off here for you, but the brake setup on this axle is a vented rotor and a larger caliper. So those of you that are familiar with the brake upgrades in the States know that a lot of people go to the vented rotor and the bigger caliper, which is like in the States, that's a 60 rotor, and the big 4-pot, which is like your later model V6 caliper. This is a factory with those parts, okay? That part number crosses directly to the 60 rotor. That is your IFS caliper. Toyota built it this way. And I have to say the brakes on this thing are great. They're much better than any other solid axle car that I've had at all. They work incredibly. I know everybody wants to see under the hood here real quick to get that diesel action. Basically, here she is in all her glory. This is a 2.8 liter mechanical diesel. And under the hood, you're gonna see a lot of similarities, right? The clutch master, the brake master. This is, again, it's not like your typical dual diaphragm booster that we typically upgrade with. But again, like I said, the brakes work really well. It's your mechanical pump and stuff, your fuel filter. Just give you a shot of the VIN tag because I don't really care. You're not going to steal my VIN shit here. That is your vacuum reservoir, power steering reservoir. And I've been doing some work to get this thing kind of back to where it should be here. A lot of these rigs are really rough, and this is a 30-plus-year-old vehicle in South America, so it's been ridden hard and put away wet, so to speak. So that is just kind of an underhood. There's not much really to show there. 2.8 liter diesel. This vehicle has got the G54 tranny. It's got your typical R1FA transfer case. Obviously that's the forward shift stuff because of the G series tranny. Moving right along, what we can talk about here is the dual cab. Yes, this is a 4-door. Yes, the entire rest of the world got four-door vehicles from at least 1979. Maybe earlier. I have never seen one, so I can't really verify that. Okay, so just to talk about the exterior a little bit more, those of you who know are experienced with the Toyotas understand that your regular Toyota pickup and the second gen 4Runner, the 90 to 95 4Runner, they use a different front door. And while they look similar, they aren't. A pickup door is roughly 4 inches longer, and the dimensions aren't exactly the same. So looking at these vehicles, the dual cab uses the same front door as the 4Runners, or Surf, whatever you want to refer to them to. Obviously it uses a different back door because the door is square. And another thing that I noticed is, so like I said, you have the length of the door being different. A full door is about 44 inches, and this is about like 40.5 inches. One thing that I learned kind of the hard way is the actual door handle in these doors is set just a touch lower than it is in a full door. So just another little kind of quirky spec of these trucks. The rest of the walk around here is pretty basic. Like, we didn't get the fleet side beds, or the international beds weren't fleet side, at least not in this market, up until I think 05 when they went to the fleet side. Everywhere else got this bed. I just kind of referred to them as the hook bed because of the external hook. These I refer to as a dual latch gate instead of the quote unquote one touch gate. I don't know, I personally like these better just because they're a simpler setup. The one-touch gates always seem to be a little bit problematic. You have those clips break off in there, and then you can't get the tailgate open. They aren't, you know, a lot of people will just slam and slam and slam those gates, and that ends up breaking them inside. It makes it kind of like a pain in the ass to work with. One thing that I think is kind of nice about this vehicle versus like the Tacoma, you have the extended cab back here in this section, so your gas door is actually in the cabin itself versus being in the bed. Just one less thing you have to mess with when you go ahead and take the bed off if you wanted to end up doing that. What else? I guess we can look at that rear spring real quick. So, like I said, the rear spring on these is a 7-leaf pack because these are a work vehicle, right? The entire rest of the world got these as a light-duty work truck, and they're a work truck. They're very bomb-proof. This truck has got the 14-gallon tank in it. And then, like I said, you have the typical R transfer case, G tranny. So mechanically, the other thing that ended up being different about this vehicle is this rear axle. So this has got the solid axle front. Again, if you know about these trucks, you know when they went to the IFS front, they also went to a wider rear axle. You ended up getting another like 3 inches of width out of the back to match the front track. Because this is a solid axle, you're still using the 55-inch track, so this vehicle uses the 55-inch track rear. But they did, and I don't know the date break, I haven't really researched it that much, they went to the larger 11-inch drum on this. So you have the short axle shaft, but you have the larger drums, right? The larger, simpler drum brake arrangement, right, so to speak. So that's basically what we have going on exterior wise, okay, as far as the changes goes on the exterior. The rest of it's the same. This is going to be like extra cab truck length, so the drive shafts are going to be like extra cab truck length. They're going to be interchangeable. I'm going to talk about this vehicle. Allegedly has 456s. I haven't verified that yet, but it feels like that's about where I'm at driving it. The tires that I put on this, 235/85/16s, the Yoka Geolanders. If you remember, that's what I put on the Danny Bonaducci 4Runner. So these have been a pretty solid tire. I've used this off-road a little bit, and like I said, I've been pretty happy with these. They balanced up pretty nice, and they run down the highway true. I think that's it. I mean, basically, as far as the exterior differences, it's pretty subtle. You know, everyone's got the big thing with the whole double cab thing, and I really think it's a travesty that the North American market didn't get them. There's really honestly no good reason for it. I don't know why they did it. It just seems silly. So I guess what we can do is we can move on to the interior differences in this guy. and they're pretty subtle too, but there are some differences. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so interior wise, you're going to see that this is, you know, very similar to what you would expect on the 89 and 95 interior of the vehicle. Okay, so basically, again, a lot of these parts are going to interchange. Obviously, the steering wheel, the dash pad. Actually, the big thing is the dash pad will not interchange. If you'll notice, this breakaway right here, this whole piece, this whole front bezel comes off of the dash. So it makes it easier to access your dash stuff and things in there. The other thing you'll notice is this dash pod is different in that we aren't getting the voltage gauges and we aren't getting the oil pressure gauge, but it does have the tach. Whereas in the North American market, that wasn't an option. Okay. Other than that, like I said, they are pretty much identical. This is an ad. I pulled it out of a surf because the altimeter is always cool. Yes, it's not set perfectly cocked because this is out of a right-hand drive car. So it would have been on that side, so you've got a little bit of a funny cant. Yeah, kind of a little funny quirk about where I'm at is they take a lot of Japanese left-hand drive cars and convert them to right-hand. So it's kind of strange, but it's what it is. So, I mean, otherwise, it's just your typical interior stuff. I'll give you a quick shot of the rear. Again, it's just pretty. This is a bare bones model. There's no power windows in this stuff. Basically most of these trucks are going to be crank windows. And about the only frill you're going to get is air conditioning. So, like I said, rear bench seat. A little bit of storage behind the seat. And yeah, that is pretty much that. So, just real basic. These would have been a vinyl seat underneath of here. These have been covered. And I don't have the headrest. It didn't come with them. I guess that's a little bit of a walk around. Thought I was going to probably have a little bit more to talk about with that, but apparently not. Like I said, you have quite a bit of overlap with the vehicle, and while it's not an American mini truck, it is in a lot of aspects the same as a mini truck. Okay, I think a lot of people just lose sight of the North American market actually being the niche market, whereas the rest of this stuff is international. Everywhere got diesels, everywhere got solid axles. And mind you, every market is a little bit different. Okay, so there are build centers. Again, primarily these came out of Japan, but some of these are actually built like in Argentina for the South American market as well. I really could like dig through like pages and pages of like Facebook. That's a completely different video in and of itself. So yeah, with that, like we spent kind of days like digging through Facebook. I talked to another guy about one of these trucks that we originally looked at. It was an 88, so it was more of a matching of the 4Runner that we had to leave behind. And it's got the 2L, so it's a little bit smaller motor. That truck ended up being a little bit rougher than it should have been. I try to like kind of refrain from talking bad on other sellers, but the guy was not really straight, was not forthcoming. Guy basically lied to my face about some stuff and then kind of blew his sale out of the water with that. So basically the only way that you're buying or selling things here is word of mouth or Facebook. And like I said, Facebook's a completely different video in and of itself, but that platform sucks. It was quite literally programmed by a 4-year-old and has never been updated in the 20 years that it's been alive. It's just absolutely horrible. And that's kind of all I'm going to say about that. So like kind of the lesson in that, obviously when you go to a new environment, there are going to be like new problems, new hazards, just new challenges with buying and selling vehicles. So you kind of have to be aware of that. You need to really, like anywhere else, need to be able to like do your due diligence. If you're buying a used vehicle, you need to either have a trusted mechanic or have a clue about what it is that you're getting into. You know what I mean? Like there are obviously like red flags on some of these cars that are just very obvious, and you just kind of need to be familiar and aware of those things. So basically, I can talk about the repairs that I've done to this since I've had it. So we brought it home And it was basically the first thing I ended up doing to it was I get it home, kind of try to baseline it, and I ended up doing having a problem with some of the lighting. So this vehicle had an aftermarket alarm put in it, and they're just trash. Don't ever put an aftermarket alarm in your car. There are simple ways to disable these vehicles without hacking into 58 wires and making it a total pain in your ass. So basically, yeah, the first mod I ended up doing was pulling that out, cleaning the wiring up, getting my lighting all working. In that time, I have done both of the front door locks because the doors were like rattly. They didn't want to close really good and clean. I put a new head unit in it because this had an older head unit installed above the factory head unit, and it's just kind of time for an update there. Like I said, I did tires because the tires that came on it were like almost 15 years old, and that's kind of never safe. Like where we're at, we are basically a couple hours from the big city, and there's kind of like a whole lot of nothing in between here and there, so that was just kind of a risk I didn't really want to take. And then the latest update that I'm doing was going through all the AC stuff on this truck. The AC didn't really work correctly from day one, and I've just found that a good mechanic is hard to find here. So I feel confident that I will be able to like make a few dollars doing competent mechanic work here. I'm going to probably focus mostly on air conditioning and electrical work. That seems to be like a big issue here. So I think that will be kind of like my bread and butter. Obviously, I'm going to stick with the Toyota stuff as much as possible, and probably work on, I don't know, a handful of these. Depending on how things go, we might think about like doing some import stuff to the States, but we'll see how that ends up going. A lot of these rigs are just really rough. I'm just going to be straightforward about it. A lot of them are very rough. And the price point difference between like these and a Surf is, the price is like almost double. It's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I can't say that it's bad because even though the prices are high, they're still, I don't want to say significantly, but they're still lower than the North American prices, right? You get the double cabs and things like this. So yeah, everyone's saying like, oh man, you should sell these up here. You could probably turn a profit on them, but you have to understand that some of these parts are hard to find, and I can't buy them from like the North American Toyota, so they have to come from the Middle East, and it just kind of can be difficult to find some of the stuff for these. So any of the vehicles coming from here are my standard of a nice vehicle that I would want to ship and sell to somebody is significantly higher than a lot of the shit that I'm going to be able to find here. That's just what it is. I bought this vehicle primarily based on, it looked like it had mostly original paint on it. The interior wasn't completely thrashed, and all the drivetrain act like it worked fine. Okay, so this is a higher mileage. This is a higher mileage vehicle. It's got 445,000 kilometers on it, which math-wise is like in the 250K range, or a little better than that, probably closer to 270. 30-year-old vehicle. A lot of these rigs are so rough, and I probably should, for the sake of the video, like dig through Facebook and just show you some of these cars that are just super thrashed and just kind of band-aided back together. And I think that's really kind of one of the bigger things here. I don't know really what the problem is, if it's just kind of like a lack of knowledge or a lack of availability of parts or lack of the money to get like correct parts for these trucks, but there's just like a lot of band-aid fixes, and it's not something that I would put my name on. I guess I kind of want to put it like that. This vehicle in my mind is probably like, when I bought it, it was probably like a 6, I don't know, like 6.5, just because it had like some shit that wasn't working. Not having AC down here really sucks, and there was some like band-aid work on the AC, and I took it to 3 different mechanics trying to get the AC working, and it was just kind of nonsense. So aside from that, it's been good. So I've done some work to it. I've got it cleaned up, runs and drives down the road fine. It's not all over the place, but it has been a little bit of a I don't want to say like learning, but driving a stock solid axle truck is not really that rad. The crossover steering, if you have a solid axle truck, is one of the very first mods that you should do, because otherwise these things are sloppy and they're all over the road, and it's just, I don't know, it's just dumb. And that's kind of like another thing from the aspect of Toyota that kind of didn't really make sense to me, or doesn't make sense to me, is the fact that the Land Cruiser 60 starting in 84 or 85 got crossover steering, and all the other Land Cruisers got crossover steering from that point forward. So considering this vehicle came out about the same time as that, I would think that they would have, at least in these later model vehicles, went to like a crossover type steering. But they didn't. This still has the old school push-pull steering on it, and I don't know, maybe they figure it works better or whatever, but that's one thing that would have been nice, since they've done some other upgrades to this truck. It would have been cool to have them actually do like a crossover steering, because that's like way up on the list of mods that this thing needs. It just, like I said, it just sucks. Regular steering on these things suck. There's really like no nice way to put that.
That wraps up another episode of Snale Racing.
Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe.
Who doesn't like that diesel purr sound?